What's up, everybody? Schuyler Callihan here with Chris Prawl. We got another episode of Between Years. We are another day closer to the season opener as West Virginia will kick things off here in week one against the number 8 Penn State Nittany Lions. And today is our weekly show where we go down and break the keys to the game, how West Virginia wins this game, and we'll just go ahead and get this thing really started right off the top here with the offense first. You go back to that game a year ago, and it felt like West Virginia really didn't know what they were kind of getting themselves into in some ways, shape, and form because of their offense and all the unknowns with it. You knew that you had a good running back in C.J. Donaldson. You felt like you had a pretty good offensive line, but there was a major question mark at quarterback with Garrett Green. There was question marks all over the place at receiver, which turned out to be true because, again, a couple of games in, you're leaning on a redshirt freshman and Hudson Clement, who got a scholarship, and then you also had a couple of true freshmen playing in Traylon Ray, Rodney Gallagher. Cole Taylor wasn't this big star that he kind of turned out to be in his first year in Morgantown. So there's a lot of question marks on the offensive side of the ball for West Virginia. And I feel like just going into this game this year, Chris, having those question marks kind of eliminated has to make you feel so much better about this game, even if the talent gap is still pretty wide.
Yeah. Uh, I think Neil Brown kind of said it best. There's still a lot of question marks out there, and you won't will find answers come Saturday. But yeah, you got to feel a lot better coming in to the season. You mentioned the receivers. Look where they started
Yep.
as that room. Look where it ended, and where it ended is where it's starting this season. So yeah, there's definitely confidence, some confidence there, but I feel like we just beat this horse to death. Like this group has to show consistency, and they're going to have to step up in big time moments, and they're going to have to step up in those big time moments in big time games. And week one, you can prove your medal right here, right? Like this is it. You're going to go up against some defensive backs. That's going to get a lot of national attention. It's going to get graded uh, for the NFL draft throughout the season. You're probably looking at top, one or maybe two of those defensive backs in the top 2, 3 rounds of the NFL draft next spring. So yeah, the talent gap's huge. So for guys that are under the radar on this offense that maybe feel like they haven't got enough publicity, and Neil Brown's kind of discussed that a little bit. Guys not getting enough recognition. Well, here's your chance to get that recognition.
Yeah, the big key in this one really too is Jaheim White. I mean, we've talked about it before here on the show. He didn't play in this game a year ago, and I think Penn State fans probably lose sight of that. They just look at this offense, what they had last year. They see the 53% completion percentage from Garrett Green, and they think, oh, they only put up what was it, 15 points against this defense a year ago. There's nothing really to worry about here. This is a whole different offense. Yes, you lose Zach Frazier up front, you lose Doug Nestor. You lost Devin Carter. There's different pieces to this offense, but I would be probably feeling a little bit better about this team, even though they don't have Zach Frazier, they don't have Doug Nestor, because going into it, you have a guy like Jaheim White. You have more established players at receiver. You're bringing in Jaden Bray. You have Cole Taylor at tight end. You know what you have with Garrett Green. It just feels like there's more answers, but particularly in the running back room. CJ Donaldson was the guy that they leaned on for those first, what, 3, 4, maybe 5 games last year. Justin Johnson got some touches, Jalen Anderson here and there, but it was so inconsistent, very underperforming out of those two backup running backs. It put so much on CJ Donaldson. That's why his body had so much wear and tear throughout the season. And when Jaheim White kind of asserted himself, kind of let CJ just kind of, be himself and be able to be more fresh late in the season. So I think that this is going to be a completely different game changing type of, piece that you can have to this offense, just having Jaheim White available.
Yeah, absolutely. White's definitely a difference maker, and um, you still got to look at that Penn State defense historically. They've always been good, and they've been good under James Franklin. They have a lot of speed that more than likely matches Jaheim White. Um, so the guys up front are going to have to do their job, and the biggest thing is making guys miss in space. So again, here's an opportunity for a guy like Jaheim White that can make that defensive line's really touted going into the season. Linebackers a little bit more questions, I think, but they're going to be, midseason. They're going to be talking about some of these guys playing next year in the NFL or the year after. So he's going to have another one that's just going to have his opportunity to prove that he can make plays against a great defense.
So with the offense, what's the number one key for you in this one outside of turnovers? Because obviously that's the cliche. We could say that every single week. But against this defense in particular, what has to happen for West Virginia to have a chance to win the game in the fourth quarter?
Passing game. Going to have success in the passing game. Going to have to be able to hit a couple of shots downfield. And we're going to have to see Garrett Green hit the bunnies, right? Like
Yep.
those little bunnies on whether it's a swing pass or a quick pass to the outside, it's going to have to hit. And it goes back to whether it's a swing pass or a quick pass to Rodney Gallagher or Day, whoever ends up getting the ball out there, making plays in space. Like 3 4 yards is great. It's part of the running game, but as part of the running game, like we just said with Jaheim White, you're going to have to make guys miss and get downfield and make big plays. So passing game is going to have to be instrumental. Obviously, if you don't have a passing game, Penn State's just going to load the box, and they're more than likely just going to load the box and make Garrett Green beat you early. It's not like they don't
Right.
have the talent to adjust, but he's going to have to prove it early. So they might just load up the box and send pressure and just protect the run. And if they hit early, I don't even think Penn State panics. Quite frankly, it's not like they're unfamiliar with offense from the Big Ten having to play Ohio State. So
Yeah.
uh, they're going to have be extremely efficient in the passing game. Guys like Hudson Clement, Jaden Bray, Cole Taylor obviously is going to be an X factor this season, but they're going to have to make some tough catches. They're going to have to fight for the ball. They're going to have to go up and high point the ball and bring it down. They all can't be wide open over the dime drops. Like you have to go make the play, and that's basically for me for the offense. That's it. Like just go make plays on the outside. We know what CJ can do. We know what Jaheim White can do. Even if those two guys get banged up, you still got Jalen Anderson sitting in the fold. So I think the running game's solid, but the passing game is going to have to improve dramatically if they want to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 100%. You're gonna have to throw the ball. You're gonna have to have a balanced attack. For me, I think it's your bread and butter. I mean, you're not gonna beat a top 10 team, whether it's home, away, neutral field, or whatever, if you don't do what you do well and do it at a high level, and that's running the football. So I think in this game, I mean, you look at their front seven. I mean, they've got guys all over the place. You kind of mentioned it already. Abdul Carter, probably a top five pick in next year's draft. Danny Dennis Sutton's another top edge rusher in the draft. Zane Durant, Devon Ellis, up front in the defensive line. Kobe King at linebacker. Tony Rojas, Tamir Robinson. They've got so many guys in that front seven that are going to be absolute studs, and they're going to be hard to run the football on. But I think at first, I wouldn't be surprised if Neil Brown comes out and does a whole bunch of this eye candy stuff. Remember, we saw it last year kind of really start to unleash in that Houston game, and then we saw it some at UCF and really just kind of got more and more as the season went on. The more eye candy you present, the muddier the picture gets for the defense, and it also wears out the secondary. When those guys are having to follow guys all over the field, when Rodney Gallagher goes from one side to the other, you really don't know where the play's going. I think that's going to be key to kind of wear those guys down in terms of going sideline to sideline. Maybe do a bunch of runs to the outside with Jaheim White early. You get to the third quarter, it's smash mouth football. You go right in between the tackles of CJ Donaldson and really wear out the front seven, whether it's the linebackers or defensive line. To me, it's a little you got to have a little bit of both here. You got to run outside, run outside, run outside, go left to right, left to right, left to right, and then start hammering it down the middle to really tire this defense out. So that way it does open up those big shots downfield. We know they're going to come with Garrett Green in this passing game, especially when you have Jaden Bray, who has been making plays left and right in fall camp. You have Traylon Ray, who is another step in the system. So to me, it's going to your bread and butter, doing what you do well, and expanding off of that. If you don't run the ball for, let's say, 150 yards in this game, you don't have a chance to win this game. I'm sorry. Garrett Green's not going to throw for 350 yards. You got to be able to run the football.
Yeah, I mean, can't really add much to anymore to the offense because I'm a big component. Like they have to be able to pass the ball. I think even if the running game's slow, by that defense. I know Heat may be a factor, but I don't think with that defensive line, they're extremely deep. They were talking about this is probably the deepest defensive line they've had in Happy Valley under James Franklin. So yeah, it's going to be just having success, and you're going to open up a lot if you can hit the intermediate passes, keep them running sideline with quick passes. Swing passes have to be on target so they can get upfield. Like these are the most important matters. And when there's a 50-50 ball down the sideline, receivers have to come down with it. They've got to make it more 70-30 this not just for this game, but for this season. So yeah, it's 100% the passing game. I know Green's got glowing reviews from Manning and the Manning Academy and everything else. But until you do it in the big time, like I have faith in Garrett Green. Like I have no doubt he's put in the work, and I have no doubt it's going to translate on the field. But I'm always skeptical of the receivers because they've been pushed around under Neil Brown um, since he's been in Morgantown. So these receivers have really got to step up. Can't be pressed up front. They've got to get off man coverage because these are going up against some pretty big D backs. Luckily, they've had Garnett Hollis Jr. to go against in fall camp, so they're not going to be stunned maybe like they were last year. So they've had all season to go against this guy. So we'll see. It's a matter
Yeah.
of like we'll see now. Like just go make the plays. You make the plays, you're going to win the game.
Flipping it over to the defensive side and Penn State's offense, clearly the big two concerns, I think, just on paper at least, this is just from the outsider's perspective here. The offensive line is not as experienced as it was a year ago. It doesn't mean they're not as talented. Those guys reload like crazy, and I think probably three of these guys are going to end up playing in the NFL, maybe a fourth, but they only have what 19 starts combined. Wormley had the right guard has 13 of those. Their starting center has zero starts. He's played some football, doesn't have a start. Their left tackle Shelton's only got one start. Again, he's played some football, has only had one start, and they have a kind of an ongoing battle at right tackle there between Dolka and Rucci, so the Wisconsin transfer. So you really don't know kind of what this Penn State offensive line is going to look like, and that's kind of where it all starts for me. Because a year ago, even though the sack totals were there for West Virginia, they were like towards the top of the Big 12 in sack totals. They didn't really win a whole lot of one-on-one matchups up there. And it's kind of weird to say that, but if you go back and look at the numbers, I think Pro Football Focus has a stat out there that they were one of the worst one-on-one pass rush win teams, either in the league or in Power Five. One of those numbers or one of those statistics. So that's going to be the number one thing for me. Does Sean Martin show up? Does Eddie Vestorinen push the pocket and get some pressure on the quarterback? That's a key. But those linebackers are going to be playing a big factor in this as well. We've talked about the linebacker depth at nauseum. They have got to show up. The second concern for Penn State is receiver. They lost their biggest playmaker in Keandre Lambert Smith. He went to Auburn in the transfer portal. They've got a bunch of new guys there. They bring in Julian Fleming from Ohio State, but he really wasn't a dude at Ohio State. He was kind of just another option for them. So does he become that here? It just feels like even though Penn State has the talent on paper, there's so many question marks that you kind of feel if you're a West Virginia fan, you kind of look at this and say that this is a little bit better than last year's setup because they had those guys on the play at wide receiver. They had the guys at tight end. And they still do. They just don't have nearly as many of them. Obviously, they're going to lean on the running backs, but where's your focus really go to when you look at this Penn State offense?
Yeah, it's really the running game. They're going to have to stop the running game, force the lower to throw the ball, make these guys, you know, prove that they are one of the better receiving groups in the Big Ten because right now on paper they're not. You know, they
Yeah.
bring back Wallace. I think he had 125 receiving yards against West Virginia last year. Had that big touchdown, I think early, that 72 yarder. And that was actually on a play. I think it was Beanie that slipped, and he still got up and
Yeah,
almost
that's
still
right.
made, and he still almost made the play after he got up. That's how underthrown the ball was. So, you know, you kind of look at that game last year. The luck wasn't really on West Virginia's side, but they didn't do anything to kind of get luck on their side either, as well. So you got to make your own luck. They didn't do that. But yeah, I think you got to. I don't feel because when you look at it, like yeah, Penn State has question marks on the outside, but West Virginia, just like Penn State does, there's a lot of question marks in the secondary. Like you think you
Yeah.
found, I believe they found answers in Garnett and or Hollis and Gaines. And but for me, it's the safeties. Like Anthony Wilson was solid last year, but he wasn't great in pass coverage. Got to get better. Burks moves down to Spear. So who's going to cover that back end? Who's not going to let anything over the top? You want to keep everything in front of you, obviously as a safety, but you need to be making plays as a safety. They also, as a secondary, dropped two interceptions in that game last year that would have turned the tides. One was in the end zone, one was at the 50, which would have really turned the momentum for West Virginia. So for me, it's the secondary as a whole, but really a focus on the safeties. With the secondary as a whole, I know we said don't say turnovers, but when it comes up that you dropped two last year and the kid only threw two
Yep.
interceptions last year, you would have doubled his total and maybe come out with a win in that game. So you could have taken away a touchdown. You could have brought momentum at midfield. I think they were down 14-7 at that point. So there was a short field opportunity to change the tie of the game. So yeah, secondary is going. If the opportunity presents itself, you got to snatch the ball. You got to make the most of those opportunities. Just like on with receivers, make the most of your opportunities. Go up, get the ball, bring it down, put your offense back on the field. And I think it starts with that secondary. Alar is talented. I think Neil Brown hit it on the head. Like that was his first full season as a starter. He wasn't great. He wasn't bad. I'll actually wrap up with a little stat between the two quarterbacks before we end. But
I
for
think I know
me,
where you're going with this.
the secondary is absolutely key. I think it was one of our episodes during fall camp. I think the strength of this defense is defensive line. I think it's being undervalued, rightfully so. When you look at, there's not a lot of production from this group right now, but I think this group, the guys they brought in, the guys they've had waiting in the wings, I think they're going to be disruptive. And I think one of those guys, Eddie V, that he's with the high motor is contagious. So if you have him just high motor and Sean Martin, especially take a big step forward this year, I think with those two guys kind of leading the charge, TJ Jackson's kind of getting lost in the mix there a little bit. I know he got a little bit of love in fall camp, but this unit's going to be tough. And then when you talk about the rushers, someone like Tyron Bradley, um, I think the takeaway after the first month is like the defensive line is a lot better than what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I mean that would be huge if so, because I know that's probably one of my biggest concerns, outside of some parts of the secondary. But I think the biggest worry there is you just don't have the depth that you would like to have, or maybe that you had a year ago. Now maybe the front line has taken a step and you feel better about that, but we'll see. For me, it's just limiting the explosive plays, because you touched on it. They had a deep ball to Keandre Lambert Smith last year. Harrison Wallace, I believe, had one as well.
That was
And
that was the one that he had the 72 yarder. Wallace had the
yeah,
72 yarder, and that was I believe his season high was against West Virginia. And it was 125 yards, and 72 of it came
it came in
on
that
play.
one game, or that one
So
play. Yeah. So it's about eliminating the explosive plays. Again, it's a cliche thing, but when you're playing a team like Penn State that has this amount of talent littered all over their roster, you kind of got to find a way to shrink the game. And goes back to your offense and running the ball effectively. You got to shrink the game as much as possible. Keep this offense off the field so you're not chasing points and you're not down 14 in the third quarter. That's not the type of game you want to get in. If you can stop the run and force this game on Drew Aller's arm, again, you want to keep everything in front of you, but if you can do that and they just have to dink and dunk their way down the field, you'll take that all day, especially when you have the two corners in Garnes and Hollis that you feel really good about, that they can play man coverage, that'll allow you to do more things in terms of bringing pressure off the edge, pressure from the secondary. You can bring pressure from all over if you have two corners that can really press. So force Penn State to dink and dunk. If they dink and dunk their way down the field, I guarantee this game will be a game for West Virginia in the fourth quarter. Anything else from you on this side of the ball?
nope, that'll do it.
So there you go. So that's it. That's how West Virginia beats Penn State. We'll see how it turns out on Saturday afternoon. Again, West Virginia taking on the Nittany Lions, kicking off at noon on Fox.
But
We'll
I want to put out my
oh yeah,
quarterback
your
set.
stat. I forgot. Go ahead.
Quarterback set up now. So Garrett Green averaged 200.5 yards a game last year, but that includes the Pitt game where he only played 6 plays.
Right.
So didn't complete pass. He was over two, got hurt, run the ball, only had 1 yard rushing. So if you take that out, he actually averaged 218.7 yards per game, while Drew Alar averaged 202.4 yards a game. He's not even that high up with the Pitt game, even with
Yeah.
including Pitt game. Alar did get hurt during the Rutgers game. So
Ah,
if you take away but he got hurt in the third quarter. But if you just take it away, he averaged 212 yards per game. And if you double up his production, even though he got hurt in the third quarter, but let's just double up his production in Rutgers game, he averaged 208.5 yards per game. So they both had 29 total touchdowns. Granted, 13 of it came on the ground from Garrett Green. So their stats are very, very similar, very similar across the board. He only threw, I think he threw 6% better than about 5-6% better on the season percentage wise. So these
well,
quarterbacks are very similar. One can throw the deep ball, one can't. So they but like Alara has a lot to prove with his arm as far as to getting the ball downfield if he wants to make the step to the next level. Green's going to have to do a lot more because of his size, and we've seen quarterbacks
sure.
of smaller stature make it in the NFL. There's been plenty of examples, but he's going to have to prove a lot with his passing game to kind of get that recognition Alara's getting, and Alara just gets it because of his size.
Well,
I just thought that was fascinating that he averaged a lot more than really Alara.
to
So I mean, you're taking out 2 games because Green missed a game as well.
to go off of that, I put this in my article earlier this week on whenever what's his name ripped Garrett Green in his evaluation. Penn State quarterback Drew Aller threw it 112 more times than Garrett Green did last year, yet only finished with 225 more passing yards.
Yep.
So, I mean, just think about that. It's a lot of dinks and dunks. Again, we know Garrett threw it a lot down deep downfield. I
And you
just
kind of expect it with their coordinator from Kansas too. So kind of expect
yeah,
that a little bit out of them. It'd be interesting to see how they use the law. And obviously that defense and that Penn State offense to me is the most intriguing aspect because I feel like there's a lot more questions on Penn State's offense than there is West Virginia's offense because they have so many returning guys. But I find that matchup the more interesting matchup in the game.
and that's what makes this game really interesting. Whether people want to look at it as a blowout or not from the Penn State side or nationally, when you have a game of this magnitude at home to kick off the season and you have a returning quarterback, you have all these pieces that West Virginia brings back. If you can score the ball, you've got a chance. So that's why I think the Mountaineers are going to have a chance to win this game. I picked against them. I still believe in my gut that Penn State will probably find a way to win the game, but it would not shock me the slightest if they did find a way to win the game. We'll find out here in a couple of days. That's going to do it here for us today on Between the Ears and for this week. Next time we'll be back on this show will be the morning after evaluating the West Virginia game from Saturday. We will be here tomorrow with Eugene as we break down the game in terms of the game itself. We're going to make our predictions and all that here on the Walkthrough Game Day Show. Make sure you subscribe to our channel on YouTube at West Virginia on SI. Follow us on X at SI_WVU. And we'll see you here tomorrow for the Walkthrough Game Day Show.